All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming in here to listen to our presentation. Maybe before we start, how many of you are already on their third coffee today and wishing they were right now in a different place? Yeah, I know I am. All right. So let's start diving in. Quick raise of hand. How many of you are using AI for localization today? In some way or so, right? That's great. Well, keep your hands up if you are using AI and you actually feel that it's a team member and not just another tool in your that you have to babysit or something that you have to constantly do. So, how many of you see AI as a team member? Now, one, dramatically less. That's what we're going to talk today about. Right? That's what we're going to talk about. So this is the gap that we're talking about.
Yeah, we all see that AI is doing great demos, but there's a long way to move to production.
You got to talk here. So, and that's because it's demos are great, but that's not how production works. And yeah, so.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sagi. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Deepdub.
I'm Oz Grakowski. I'm Chief Business Development Officer at Deepdub. So as we dive in, I need to flip the slides as well. So maybe, Sagi, before we start diving in, maybe you can give us a quick, background about Deepdub, who we are and what does Deepdub actually do?
Just a little bit about us. We've been around since 2019, really paving the path for bringing AI dubbing to production, doing very high-end stuff, not the automated stuff. But now we're taking it to the next level, and this is what we're going to talk about today.
So, yeah, let's keep diving in, do a quick reality check.
I think the interesting question, if AI is already being used, and all of you raise your hands here, what is still broken or what is still not working?
Yeah, so I think the bottom line, most AI tools, they generate outputs, right? They don't really understand the workflow. And that, they translate, they generate voices, they run some QC, but they really run in isolation. And production doesn't work like that, right? That's the kind of the reality check that production is not a lab. Production doesn't work in isolation. So your turn, Sagi. How would we think about all of that differently?
I think before I dive into just to talk about dubbing, I want to say something from my personal experience and a thing that happened in the last few weeks, especially with the Cloud Cowork release. I think this was the moment in time, even for me on a personal level, that it's switched my entire workflow on a daily basis between using the chat, right, as the chat is asking questions, getting returns, and getting actions and getting output out there. I think this was the moment in time that really made me feel that AI is becoming a team member. So let's try to imagine traditional AI like in Excel. Pretty powerful, but you're doing all the heavy lifting of tweaking it and asking the questions and so on. Think of Agentic AI more of a CFO in your team. You give it a goal, and it will figure out what is the path and what are the trade-offs and what levers you can pull to get the output that you really want.
So let's translate that to dubbing specifically. How does that translate to dubbing?
So the traditional AI way, maybe around tech, generating voice, you hit a button, you get some audio, but you still need director, QC, editing, translation, coordination, mixing. The Agentic AI today is more of having another dubbing director in the team. It can understand context, inject the context early in the process before you start translating, adapting, casting, and so on. It can help you with performance assignment and also with some suggestions on what can happen next.
All right, I think that's a great opportunity, because if that didn't fully click with you, then the best way for us to explain that would be to show a quick demo.
Hi, my name is Maya, and I'm a dubbing director. At Deepdub, our localization process is fully automated and integrated into our customers' workflows. Now, we're bringing Agentic AI into every step of the process. Today, I'll show you one example, how it helps me curate quality in real time. This is the Agentic Localization Assistant. It lives right inside my episode, reads my content, and acts on my instructions the way you always wished someone could. I tell it, find segments that start before the audio, or flag untranslated lines. It reads the entire episode, runs every check, and drops markers exactly where I need to look. And when it needs a judgment call, it asks me. But it's not just QC. I ask it to read the transcript, find the character names, and rename the tracks. Done. And when a check works, I save it. One click, it becomes a validation rule that runs automatically on every export for every project for every client. My standards are now built into the pipeline. This is what agentic AI in localization looks like. Every check automated, every standard enforced at scale.
All right. Hopefully it gave you a glimpse into it.
Yeah. So what are the actual capabilities behind the sauce, if you would have to frame it?
You got to think about it as a full stack dubbing coworker in the end, right? It basically handles the transcript, it handles the ingest, the translation, adaptation, voice generation, casting, sync, all of those capabilities. But the key actually is not the list of capabilities, right?
What would be the key in that case?
The key is actually the coordination, right? It's how they are all coordinated, and instead of separate tools, those capabilities, they are aware of each other in a way, and they work together inside a single workflow. And the key is essentially, it's like, this is what makes it feel like a real coworker. Going back to my first question, a teammate, team member that basically works with you. It's not just a toolbox. So, Sagi, your turn now. Talked about capabilities, how all of those coordinated capabilities, how do they show up in real workflows?
I'll focus on 3 examples where traditional tools, I wouldn't say break, but it's a challenge, especially when you try to scale and you're like very dependent on having people trained and scaled and, making sure that they won't miss anything. Then you need to add another QC layer and so on. So I think the first area is between translation and adaptation. Okay, this is where you can understand context throughout the entire episode. You can extract KNP, you can enforce KNP, and you can use that to apply a similar tone. Let's say if you have a specific character that behaves being like very sarcastic, this is something that you can now with the skill, you can put it throughout the entire adaptation flow along the episode. The second area is about QC. So you can be way more structured. If you have creative guidelines, you can create a skill in the agent and ask the agent to QC that before the human QC comes in. So the idea is maybe to even identify things that would maybe human QC can miss. So it's not just about flagging issues, also about making suggestions, things about, colloquial translation or things about curse words, whatever. And the last thing is now with accessibility, that we can read the video and understand the video. And we can use that also in creating audio description scripts and pretty much get to a very high level of automation there with creating the entire audio description track.
Is there anything common between all of those examples and others that are not mentioned here?
I think going back to my personal example with co-work, the difference here is about decision. This is like the main thing that we were able to get is that we see good decisions that the agent is making. So we can shape it and shape the skill in a way that we can really get actionable suggestions. You say, okay, this is what I suggest you to do. And we see that 70-80% of the time, the human in the loop or the directors that work on the content would accept what the agent had suggested. Oz, now it goes back to you. A little bit about the infrastructure, maybe a little bit what happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's great because that's exactly where AWS comes in. What we're seeing on stage in the platform, in our workflows, is not just a front-end experience. It's an orchestration layer in the end, that runs on top of AWS infrastructure. And AWS really gives us the ability to scale, reliability, real-time performance. And we use services like Bedrock, Anthropic. They help us power the reasoning layer, for example, behind the coworker. Yeah, and the connection is really between the connection between the agentic reasoning and enterprise infrastructure is basically runs seamlessly, and AWS is what helps us run all of that intelligence, make it usable in production and at scale. All right. So why do we need it? Sagi, can you talk about why does it actually matter?
The most important part for us is about scaling. I think that's the most, the motivation behind using that agentic. So it's not just about, it's pretty obvious that you want better quality, which we have. We see like higher acceptance rates reported by our customers. We want to get faster turnaround time, right? It would be like in a day and date, meeting a turnaround time of 4 hours for an episode, or full season delivered in day. Obviously lowering the cost, but I think all of it comes down to having the ability to decide for management to make smarter decisions. So instead of investing a lot upfront, in which what you would typically do with traditional dubbing, I think AI dubbing in that case takes you to a different level of decisions. You can see what are the top performing assets and then invest in that, because you can get it dubbed in 2 weeks. And that's in traditional dubbing, you probably have to wait longer. So I think this is the direction that we're trying to go to, give more power of smarter decision making to our clients.
Exactly. And this is pretty much the message we want to end up with and have you go with, as you go away from this presentation. It's not about adding more AI tools. We're not into just creating AI tools for the fun of it. It's about moving into systems that understand the workflow and can operate inside it, and giving the power in the hands of decision makers to take smarter decisions in real time. We see this playing a big part in everyday interactions that we have with our customers. Today they need to put a lot of the risk up front at the beginning of the process at the front end, and knowing they have those capabilities at their disposal gives them the ability to actually take better decisions constantly.
I think it's pretty common with every new technology, and I think it's not unique for our industry, something that you see across the board. It's, the first thing, okay, how we reduce costs, right? People are talking about how many jobs will disappear because of AI. And I think now we are in a different level of the conversation. Now it's about how can we do better, or how can we do things that were locked before with this new technology. I think that's a much more interesting discussion. Yeah, that's it. And open to questions.
Yeah.
Topics that people want to raise.
Any questions? Again, we hope we gave you like an insight into what agentic and how agentic capabilities look in dubbing workflows. I know that, coming into the show, a lot of people were questioning, how does that actually work? What does that mean? So hopefully it gave you a little bit of an understanding and a little window. The capabilities run way deeper, and the use cases open up dramatically with those capabilities. And if you have any further questions, we'd love to take them. We also have a booth here at W2300L, so feel free to stop by and keep digging deeper into the discussions. But we have a few minutes. We'd love to take questions if you have them. Everyone understands agentic workflows in dubbing and agentic dubbing coworker, how it works. That's great, by the way. I mean, we love it, right? But it means two things. Either our presentation was very clear or you didn't have enough coffee today. Yes.
How should we be thinking? Thank you, by the way, that was helpful. Understand everything now. How should we be thinking about this differently for recorded broadcasts versus live broadcasting in terms of what you guys do and how us as content creators and distributors should think of the service that you're offering?
Well, the agentic workflow, the agentic dubbing coworker that we're presenting applies more, to be honest, to offline content. We have solutions for live content today. We're partnered with Newsmax. You can actually watch Newsmax feed, news feed dubbed live into Spanish. But it's a different thing. I think agentic, in that sense, will come in different areas, right? And probably also, when it becomes a little bit more real time.
I think real time is just not there yet for the agentic stuff.
Exactly. We're being in many places where people were asking me, we're using Sonnet or Opus, for the reasoning. We're using Sonnet because it's faster, and it's still not there in terms of the speed, but the quality is actually really good.
I think, needless to say, that also eventually compute costs money.
Correct.
When you push the boundaries, then go into like doing something that is very real time, the cost can be not beneficial anymore. So you need to find that line of like where it still makes sense.
The value we see in offline is very dramatic. Okay, in the offline side is very, very dramatic. The value of the agent, of the agentic coworker that sits next to you, and that additional teammate that we have is not an incremental change. It's a leap forward. Any other questions? Thank you, by the way, for this question. Any other questions?
Agentic Coworker, is that a proprietary software that you have created? Is that your own AI foundational model, or is it a standard Claude or Anthropic that you integrate?
It's a combination. So first of all, the platform is entirely proprietary. The models are entirely proprietary. The reasoning is Anthropic. Okay, the reasoning is Anthropic. Everything you saw in the video, and you're more than welcome to come and say it in our book, is an orchestration of all of those capabilities to create a decision layer that can actually act on that reasoning. All of that is proprietary and happens within our platform. Yeah. Got one more minute. Last question, if there is one. So again, thank you so much for being with us today. You're more than welcome to visit us at our booth, and hope stay tuned for more. Thank you.